MyFantasySportsTalk.com.
Last week on My Fantasy Podcast.
Our new MFST Fantasy Basketball Champion, Daniel Kalura, New York Storm. My co-host is Dan Shaw. What up, dude?
I don't want to say anything.
How you like that intro? That was the best intro we ever had.
That was a good intro there. It broke my soul. So I'm hurting. I'm limping into the podcast right now after that introduction. That was good, Brandon. I knew there was going to be something coming.
Well, you promised me cake last week, and I'm not getting cake, so I feel it's only right that I return the favor and actually do something for you. It's just for you.
I'm sure if I went outside, I would still freeze my extremities off.
Tookus.
What? Hocus pocus?
Tookus. You'd freeze your tookus off.
Tookus. Yeah, that's what is that? An Arkansas thing?
Welcome to My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Your guys are back. Brandon Reed, Dan Schalk back for another one. Appreciate it, podcast peeps. Appreciate you for joining us through Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. Do we do Snapchat, Dan?
No, we don't. Why are you promoting something we don't even do?
We should. We might. So in the future, just be on the lookout. My Fantasy Podcast, MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Big show today. Ryan Thomas is going to be here on the show from Thomas Take Podcast. Plus, me and Dan are going to break down picks 11 through 32 of the draft. Since we missed the podcast last week, we're going to do the back 2/3 of this mock draft that me and Dan have put together. And if you check out MyFantasySportsTalk.com right now, you can see it all laid out as we've got that published to the site as well. So appreciate you for joining us, and it's going to be a big show. We're going to call this one On the Clock, Dan. We are on the clock because we have a big live NFL draft show coming up in a week.
I'm taking naps already in preparation because it's going to be a long-ass night. Of fun and good times.
Yeah, and it surprises. It didn't take long last year.
The Bears are still in the NFL, so
and so is Cleveland and Buffalo. We'll talk about Buffalo a little bit later. But so drastic weather changes here. You're sitting there trying to take naps in some cold ass weather too. You're still below 20 there in Buffalo with snow on the ground, and I'm climbing up to about 90 here in the South.
Yeah, enjoy it because we're still waiting for spring to approach. Cold. We had an ice storm that left an inch of ice on the roads and places. Arkansas would have shut down if that happened down there.
For a week.
Yeah, so it's been rough, but we're just hoping. I want 50 degrees. I'll take 50.
Yeah, 50 is not bad. Trust me, I know. Is when we got so low this year, staying below freezing for like weeks at a time. That's just not common, to stay below freezing like that. And it just stayed cold. So I'm like, man, just give me 55. But all right, so all the weather talk as well on the podcast, but here's officially what the rundown looks like that me and Dan and eventually Ryan Thomas are going to get to today. So we're going to start out just talking about what's going on in the world. So several things here that we haven't had a chance to really talk about yet on the podcast since Dez Bryant was released from Dan's Dallas Cowboys. So we got to talk about that. Also, Tom Brady, is he going to play next year? Dan keeps telling me this dude's going to play till he's 44. He hadn't even committed to play next year, so I don't know. We'll find out, but we'll talk about it as he has yet to say he's officially going to play next year. DeAndre Francois, have y'all guys seen that story? What is going on with DeAndre Francois being basically surveilled for months? But anyway, we'll talk about that. FSU quarterback DeAndre Francois. And the crazy weather has struck the MLB world, as Dan knows too. And I noticed that too, playing fantasy baseball. A lot of cancellations out there this year. Postponements. I don't like that. But anyway, NBA playoffs. We'll break that all down. Bring in Ryan Thomas. Talk the NFL draft. Before me and Dan give our back end 11 through 32 picks. And that sounds like a lot already, Dan, but that ain't all. We got mailbag questions too on top of all that.
Mailbag questions and good news in the mailbag. So, yeah, it was exciting. It's a good mailbag this week, so you'll definitely want to stay tuned. Or just skip ahead if you're watching it now. Just skip towards the end. That's fine. You know, I don't know if you noticed, and a lot of people might not have, but as you mentioned Des Bryant getting released, my cat Des Bryant, now named the kitty formerly known as Des, completely raided my webcam, I guess you would call it, and tried to just go bonkers. So I blame you, Brandon.
You know, that used to be a catnip treat called Bonkers. Did you know that?
I did not.
Okay.
No, did you eat that on the regular growing up?
Yeah. Why? Why do you ask?
I don't know what's custom on the menu in Arkansas.
I grew up in Memphis, though.
Oh yeah, that's true.
A soul food catnip. Okay, but anyway, so yeah, I knew something was going on there. And I'm just glad you could quickly return as Des the kitty's going nuts, just stirring it up. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Is this Des the kitty? But yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, the mock breakdown and answer all the mailbag questions, which you mentioned, the My Fantasy Podcast family is growing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. So stay tuned. Big news on the podcast today. Probably the biggest news, really, the podcast, to be honest with you, Dan. We're just doing a podcast. We're just talking about sports, you know, but the family is growing. So we'll talk about that too. So big show today. I mean, all that. NBA playoffs? Playoffs?
Yeah, playoffs. I haven't watched a minute of it. I told you earlier today. NBA playoffs. I guess I'll watch some of the finals, but these games now, I guess it's, you know, a little bit more parity this year than in years past. But it's still not. A lot of the games are just blowouts. I mean, if I could stay up, I would watch the Portland games. But East Coast time. I mean,
yeah, because they're late for me. I know you got no chance.
Yeah, so it's been difficult because the games I wanted to watch are 10:30 tip times over this way. So, so a guy has to sleep sometime.
Well, but I know what you mean. It is such parity this year that maybe it's hard to be intrigued by the matchups because you don't really know exactly what to expect. I mean, even from team to team, you don't really know which team is going to show up, even to the tippity top. Houston, which played a fairly close first game, even at Golden State, you know, if Kevin Durant may have an off night, then they're not the same team. LeBron. But we'll revisit that in the NBA section and take a look back at our predictions and see where we stand in some big games tonight in the NBA playoffs. But also talk to Ryan Thomas again. No telling what he'll want to talk about, Dan. I mean, there's always something in Buffalo.
He probably wants to talk about his cats. He could probably host an hour-long podcast each day about his damn cats.
That's a good point. I don't think he's ever mentioned that on this podcast, to be honest with you.
We'll bring up his cats later. Yeah, I'm obsessed with my animals, but not even near to the level that he is with his cats. And he's proud to be a cat guy.
No, I follow him on social media. I know.
Yeah, you know. Two champs. That's his thing. For him and his cat. Two champs.
Yeah, but yeah, I know. I've heard. But yeah. Okay, so it'll be big. It'll be big fun in the Bayou. I know he'll want to squeeze in some Buffalo Bills talk, but we got a lot of NBA talk to get into, and we're going to start out with what's going on in the world right now. It's been a minute since we caught up with you, so what's happening?
Here's what's happening.
So you may have cut out this time, Des the Kitty. This may have been the exact time that Des the Kitty cut out the mic and the broadcast altogether from your side. But I was explaining to you that we're going to talk about Des Bryant being released from your beloved Cowboys. I want to know how you feel about it.
It hurt. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I mean, I had an attachment to Des. There was probably like a year straight where I was just the type of guy that just out of nowhere would just say Des, just because I liked the guy. He was one of my favorite players.
Cat after him.
Yeah, I mean, I named my cat after him, and it's a female cat, and I named it Des Bryant.
That is love.
You know, it's I picked out the name before the cat. And it was definitely tough. I thought the Cowboys all along were going to keep him. If you heard me on the podcast at all, you know, I was pretty confident they would make it work. So to see them not even offer a pay cut, which was reported, just Jerry didn't want to do that to Des, hurts even more. Is they didn't even attempt to make it work with him. So
it was only going to be like $8 million, though, right?
$12.5 million was his salary, and his cap hit was 16. So.
Okay.
You know, but you could always move it into a signing bonus, and that so they could have made it work, but they didn't even attempt to. So that's what hurts the most. And Des was committed to Dallas. That's where he wanted to be. So
no doubt. But they are strapped though financially, right? Though, Dan. I mean,
right. But here's the thing: basically they're doing this by cutting him now. Is they're saving the cap room for this year. But right now, there's not really any free agents that you're going to be spending that money on. That's all coming on. So,
what would it save them?
$16 million. If cutting him, they save 16
out of this year's cap.
This year's cap. So I mean, of course, that's a lot of money. But you did it a little late, where all the top free agents that you could actually spend that money on are gone, and they're filling their roster right now with solid pickups, but they're middle of the pack guys, so they can only do so much. Let
me ask you this then. This is my next biggest question, which I ponder, is especially when we talk about fantasy sports, because this is a fantasy. It's a fantasy side. It's a fantasy podcast, so we talk about a lot of fantasy, and I'm strictly thinking about fantasy value here. But what do you feel about his value going forward into next year with the Cowboys?
Well, with the Cowboys, I don't think it's that great because of the quarterback play. I mean, that's the thing. People are saying, "Oh, Des is aged. Des isn't creating separation anymore." Well, here's the thing: he never really did. He was always a power guy that had a good catch radius and can win those 50-50 balls, and that's what Tony Romo took advantage of. He would throw it when Des was covered. And Des would make plays that way. Dak doesn't do that. Dak throws to open guys, open windows. He doesn't really fit the ball in the way Tony did, and that hurt Des's value. Sure, injuries played a factor for a certain length of time, but that wasn't the reason this year. This past year, why he struggled. It was quarterback play. So,
absolutely.
Moving forward with Des in fantasy, if he goes to a team with a solid quarterback, I think he's a wide receiver one in fantasy football again.
And we're going to talk about that real soon, because we do have a mailbag question about that exact same topic. Where should and could Des go at this point? But yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your take on him being released in the official. That's him. That's the end of the Des Bryant era in AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, sad.
But you definitely think it was worth it for them to keep him, no matter, do whatever you have to do, but keep him just on the team.
Yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more effort. And it's tough because it's kind of as a Cowboys fan, it's a good thing and bad thing. Jerry is no longer running this team. I think if it was Jerry's choice, I mean, Des would still be a part of this team. So. There's some business guys and some other guys, Stephen Jones, obviously, but some other guys in that front office that have some serious leeway and kind of make the decisions financially and rightfully so. I mean, for a lot of teams, I think this would work, but for the Cowboys, I think Allen Hurns is not a number one receiver. It stinks too and we're going to get to this when we talk about our mock draft, but I was really hoping Cowboys would go defense first round, shore up that defense, whether it be D-line, a run stuffing defensive tackle or even a defensive back. But now it's wide receiver is looking more likely. Although I'm not a fan of that idea. But we'll get into that later. But
Yeah, I was just looking at it just now. Yep, we're gonna talk about that. But yeah, man, I don't know. That's tough. That was really surprising to me. It's a surprising move to actually pull that trigger right now this year. Maybe next year I could totally see it. Wouldn't think twice about it. But this year, it was kind of a surprise to me. So, what about Tom Brady? Is he going to play next year, Dan?
he's going to play till he's 45. So, of course, I mean, it's just that it's a chronological timeline you have to look at. He is not 45 next year. So, yes, he will be playing. Pretty simple, right? Math.
I think so. Yeah, this is all about media attention, just to create a story and keep something going on a pretty slow, boring day, I guess. Isn't that what you were telling me earlier?
No, it's a Tuesday. Oh, it's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. It doesn't matter. Tuesday, Wednesday.
I just said Monday. I don't know, man. Yeah, that's how much I care about this story because it's nonsense. Yeah, I think Adam Schefter is the one who created this, and it's obviously ESPN just trying to grab some headlines, some viewers, make some type of story, because this is a non-story completely. We know.
Didn't we talk about that last year? Or was it Ben Roethlisberger? It was Roethlisberger last year. We did the same exact thing, probably the same exact time of year. We need to go back and check Schefter's timeline on Twitter, because this is probably about the same exact time we were talking about. Is Ben Roethlisberger even going to come back? Is he just going to retire? Enough with football.
Dumb.
Brady is 41 now.
Yeah, but you don't see. Here's the thing: if you went to myfantasysportstalk.com today for your sports news, you would not have seen that garbage. Huh?
Yeah, well, I agree. It's not worth taking the time to publish. Yeah, I agree. So we talked about DeAndre Francois a little bit. Dan, did you have a chance to keep up with this crazy story?
I didn't until reporter Newbreed prepped me on it before the show. But yeah, it was good. Surveilled for 2 months, thinking he's a drug kingpin. I liked it, but obviously they were not successful.
No, not in the least. If you're going to surveil somebody for 2, and maybe they just caught him on a good day. Okay, maybe a good day for him anyway. Maybe normally you have bags and bags
Just
of weed.
unloaded it. Yeah.
Yeah. But today he just had, I don't know, less than an ounce is what's being reported. So really nothing. He just got citations. So think about the man hours invested in that. They invested 2 months worth of surveillance and got a ticket out of it.
Now that I'm thinking about it, they probably didn't want another Jameis Winston on their hands, and that whole saga with his supposedly sexual assault with on-campus student, and
that's a little bit different from even selling a little bit of weed. I'm not condoning either act. I'm just saying it's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, Florida State quarterbacks and the police, they obviously don't go. Well, Florida State football team and the police don't go hand in hand usually. So.
Well, and this was the Tallahassee police that conducted the 2-month-long surveillance. And then if you're going to surveil somebody, at least have the intel to know when to kick the door in. If you thought this is the time to bust him and you found a little baggie full of weed, write your ticket, hang your head, and walk out the door. But that was just a silly story. DeAndre Francois, which is recovering from I think is ACL.
Yeah, he tore a whole bunch of stuff pretty early on in I think against
first game.
Clemson. Yeah, Clemson.
First game of the season, unfortunately for Florida State.
I mean, they probably just thought he was medicating. And
well, hey, it could probably be proven. But I guess he's trying to come back for next year. Should he be the starter next year, Dan? I mean, is he the guy?
Yeah, I mean, he was thinking about entering the NFL draft after a good year this year. He was a redshirt sophomore, so he was eligible. But yeah, I mean, he's a talented kid. If he shows that he's healthy, we could be talking him in this year about where he's going in the NFL draft.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking injury. Like I said, first game of the season. Against Clemson, but crazy story. Bad intel. I think Tallahassee police just got some bad intel there. That was embarrassing. That was just embarrassing. So the weather, Dan, It's canceled now, a record, or at least since I think 2007, but this is like a record that's sure to be broken, I think. So MLB this year, Major League Baseball has had, I think up until today, I don't really know, but up until today, 125, 126 postponements so far in the first 3 weeks of the season.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Not only for fantasy baseball purposes, but just for the game. I mean, you want to watch baseball. Well, I guess more so for fantasy baseball purposes, especially if you have any Twins or White Sox or Tigers on your teams, then you're talking multiple games a week, which definitely impacts your scoring week in, week out in fantasy baseball. So it sucks.
So what it put on your weatherman hat? What is causing this? What is wrong with this damn temperature, Mother Nature this year?
It's a couple things. The MLB started the baseball season earlier than ever before. I think that has a lot to it. That's a lot to do with it. That's not really being talked about too much.
Well, let me ask you this, Dan. Do you typically have this kind of snow in mid-April?
I wouldn't say it's typical, but in Buffalo here, yeah. I mean, we've had snow in May before, so it's you expect the unexpected in Buffalo. Now, a lot of this is happening more in like Minnesota, the Midwest, some of the East Coast still, but yeah, I mean, it's just winter has lasted a little bit longer this year than previous years, and the MLB starting earlier kind of bit it, and it's kind of a double-edged sword for Major League Baseball because people complain that the World Series goes too far, into the end of October, even November 1st, where a game was played 2 years ago. So it's definitely, well, if you want it to be earlier in the World Series, we have to move up the year. I think ultimately you're going to see the season shortened within the next few years. Not by a lot.
You know how I feel about that, Dan. That's the reason I don't watch a lot of baseball. 162 games. You ain't got to kill the guys. I mean, 145 would be plenty. Be absolutely plenty. That's enough sample size. I think the schedule is ridiculous. You're a baseball enthusiast, so you want baseball every single day, and I just can't follow it like that, man.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not for everybody, and I think Major League Baseball is gonna. Rob Manfred is kind of a progressive commissioner. A lot of the old school baseball guys hate him. I actually like him. I think he's doing.
He's going to have to get a lot of owners on board to ever shorten a season.
I don't think you're going to see the proposed one that I saw is 162 drop down to 154. So you're talking to 8 games out of 162 really isn't too much, but it basically gives you a week to 2 weeks.
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
That would allow that. So I think that would be okay, and I would be accepting of that. I still get 154 games plus postseason, so it does work.
Yeah, it's still too damn much to me. It's just a lot of baseball, man. That's just a long season. The grind shouldn't have to be like that. You shouldn't play no more than 4 games in a week. I mean, come on. But they get like 2 days off a month. So moving on to fantasy baseball. This league is crazy this year. It's going to be a fun league this year, Dan. I got a feeling because our last podcast, you were gloating, and I agreed with you. Your team was killing it. I mean, killing it. You probably beat everybody by 200 points in the first week of the season. But last week, you turned around and lost.
Yeah. Postponements. That's what I'll blame it on. No, I think I may have gotten hosed. I think I got hosed, Brandon.
Okay. You want to talk to the commissioner about that?
Yeah, let me talk to him. Where's a mirror? So I don't know if it was even announced, but the Purtons, our family podcast friends, are in our fantasy baseball league for the site, which includes some fans. And we swung a deal where I was able to grab Shohei Ohtani.
Finally moved him. They finally moved him.
Yeah, I think I know why. But
Sucker's born every minute.
Ohtani, I got Ohtani Conforto, which ended up being the deal sealer, and Carlos Rodon, who's on the 60-day DL. He was kind of just a toss in, and I ended up giving up a load. Now that it's coming back and looking like it, I gave up Jose Barrios, which is the star of that deal. Jake Odorizzi, his Twins teammate. Yoan Moncada, who I'm regretting adding in. because he's going off right now. Hit a grand slam earlier today. And I gave away one more. Carlos Gonzalez. So I gave away 4 guys.
It was a huge trade. But it was so intriguing, though, of Shohei Ohtani,
So, if he could actually play and he left yesterday start with a blister on his finger, which isn't good. So that's not only going to hurt his pitching, but now he's not going to be DHing for me. So you make that deal hoping for the batter Ohtani and the pitcher Ohtani, and now I'm getting nothing. So definitely took a hit on my team right now, but I'm hoping for a bounce back. It's a long season, 162 games.
Unfortunately, yeah. Got a blister on his little finger. Got a blister on his thumb. Dire Straits. You ever heard that song, Dan?
No, is that country?
Maybe the way I sung it, but no, it was like rock in the mid '80s. Dire Straits.
Nope, never even heard of them.
You ever heard that song? I want my MTV.
No.
Okay, I'll have to insert that in the podcast. You know what the hell I'm talking about. People at home know what I'm talking about. So big show, all that. Of course, that's just the headlines, news, what's going on. But next week, we have got the live NFL draft show brought to you by My Fantasy Podcast. Tune in for that. It'll be live on YouTube. We'll send out the link so you guys can watch along with us live and all the parade of writers we're going to have on for the live draft show. So I mentioned that. I mentioned the My Fantasy Podcast family is expanding. We'll talk about that in just a second. But something else I didn't want to neglect to mention, Dan, is that you've got something big coming up Friday when this podcast is released, most likely, that you're going to have a Q&A session with former NFL GM Phil Savage.
Yes, yeah, it's a media Q&A, so it's not a one-on-one interview. It is from Nationwide, a Q&A session, but I have been invited to join, which I was great to hear. I'm very honored to take part in that. But basically, Phil Savage, who is now the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and being a credentialed member of the Senior Bowl gives me access to this, so it works out well. So I'm going to join in on the call, and it's basically for an hour and a half. Phil Savage just taking NFL draft questions. So I put a post out there. If anybody wants any draft questions asked, I'd be happy to ask for them. I have some already and some of my own that I want to add in. I don't know how many questions I'll be able to get to. But I hope to hear what he has to say. And anytime you can take insight from a former NFL GM, albeit against the Cleveland Browns, you definitely want to listen and learn and see what he has to say.
Yep. So that is big. I'm excited to hear. I want you to, bullet point some definitely some questions that you want to get answered. And even take them, like you said, from the audience here, and maybe we can get some kind of publication out from that. But anyway, it's going to be a lot of great stuff to talk about during the live draft show next week. So could be a crazy draft. So a lot of stuff there. Dan, that's almost big enough for half a podcast right there, what we just did, and all that big news and all that stuff.
Des!
Yeah, emotional. It's quite an emotional.
We're running high right now, Brandon. The emotions.
Yeah, it was quite an emotional first half hour. So next, we're going to do NBA playoffs. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. We're going to be on Snapchat soon. Check that out. We're posting sexy pics. So get more followers.
Of our cats. Steal some T takes. He's got a big cat.
Thomas Take, who's going to be joining us in just a minute. But first of all, I just want to kind of go through these NBA playoffs, Dan. I know you said you really haven't had a chance to, really catch up on many games, any games. Don't care. I don't understand. Your team Minnesota made the playoffs.
Yeah, but as the 8th seed, and Houston is the only real threat to Golden State, and I obviously don't want Golden State to win again or even make the finals. So Houston's my one chance. So I'm riding them in the West.
But you're not really watching?
No, I really haven't. It's tough with so much baseball on. You're really into it early in the year, so I've been watching a ton of baseball. And the playoffs. I lied. I did watch a little of the Heat 76ers game 2 the other night, so that was good to see because I was the only one to pick the Heat to win.
Right, and we got a specific mailbag question about that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Save your fire. Okay, so just kind of skimming through it right now. Toronto is up 2-0 on Washington. Boston is up 2-0 to my surprise on the Bucks. I don't know how Boston just keeps carrying this thing through. That Philadelphia Sixers and Heat series right now is tied up 1-1 thanks to that win Miami got just the other night, and Father Prime carrying the Heat to a win. Them Cleveland Cavaliers, they're down. They're down 1-0. Their game is tonight, Wednesday night, to try to tie this series up against Indiana. Houston out west. Like I was telling Dan off camera a little while ago, or maybe it was on camera, I don't remember. Close game against his team, Minnesota, there in the first game. That game, too, is also tonight. I'm going to talk about this in just a second, Dan, but I'm afraid that Orlando San Antonio Spurs are just about done. I mean, done is that type of franchise for a little bit anyway. I think it's all going to come crumbling down soon. They're down now 2-0 easily. 2 easy games by Golden State over San Antonio. Portland is in a hole, believe it or not. New Orleans Pelicans are up 2-0. And then that OKC Utah series is being led by Oklahoma City 1-0. So just all that brief stuff right before the games tonight, Dan. Are you surprised by any of that?
Yeah, despite picking the Pelicans to win the series, I'm surprised they're up 2-0 right now on
You
Portland.
picked them in 7, right?
Yeah, and I definitely, even with them winning the series, I didn't expect them to steal 2 in Portland right away. So that's definitely been a surprise. I mean, the just looking at the box score, Drew Holiday lit it up last night, so you got to give him props. He's outplaying Damian Lillard in the series, and it's been evident, and they're in trouble. Portland, a lot of people, they were a sexy pick to make the Western Conference Finals, I think, and I don't think they're going to get out of the first round now.
It's a different animal in the playoffs. Lillard has been struggling a little bit, but and this is another topic I want to get into in just a second, a standalone topic, but is New Orleans better without DeMarcus Cousins? Because it kind of seems like it. It kind of seems like when you unleash Anthony Davis, then, stuff happens. And along with Drew Holiday, even Rajon Rondo, E'Twaun Moore has been playing solid. They're a good team. They're a really good team. Nothing should shout to you that, Portland should definitely win the series. I had Portland in 7. So, Dan, you picked the Pelicans in 7. I picked Portland in 7. Knew it was going to be a dogfight. We'll see. I'm not sure Portland has what it takes at this point to win 4 out of these last 5 games. Do you?
No, I think they're done. I think I'm gonna be surprised if this goes more than 5 games. I mean, it might even be a sweep because I think they're back in New Orleans these next 2. So you're asking to win on the road in the playoffs. That's tough.
So let's dive into it. Are they better? Are the Pelicans better without DeMarcus Cousins, Dan?
I think so, yeah. And it's not even a knock on Cousins at all. It's just the way the NBA is played. It's hard to play with 2 7-footers in the middle. I mean,
yeah, even though they're great players, elite players in the NBA, it slows the game down. It's a little more sluggish.
It's and not only that, but just defensively, the fast paced up and down the court, just the way the NBA is. It's a faster paced, guard dominated league now, and having 2 7-footers on the floor is actually, despite their abilities defensively, I think it actually hurts their defense. And then offensively, it's tough sharing the rock between those 2 guys. I mean, a lot of the times Anthony Davis, despite his ability to shoot 3-pointers, a lot of the times during those games that they played together, he was standing out by the 3-point line. I mean, rebounding, shot blocking kind of gets taken away that way. So I think they are, yeah. And I think you're going to see New Orleans take notice of this, especially if they can advance and look to move Cousins maybe in the offseason.
Yeah. Was he not a free agent after this year?
Oh, Oh, I don't know if he is.
I think he was. I thought he was gonna, because the trade was a season and a half ago, right?
That's true. Yep, it was a 1.5 year. Yeah, so he's a free agent anyway. So it hurts, coming off a ruptured Achilles, that might hurt his contract status. So, but I don't think you're going to see New Orleans go heavy to try and re-sign him.
No, with the roster assembled, knowing you're paying AD too. Yeah, I don't know that you hang on to both of them because you're showing that you can do it. I think you add a different type of piece, free up that money, which DeMarcus Cousins is big money. I don't know exact contract, but I think it's in the mid to high teens, isn't it, Dan? I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, well, I think he's probably still going to command a max deal, in the off season. So, yeah, definitely.
So I don't know that it's worth it, but it's kind of interesting. They're showing it. Are they really better without DeMarcus Cousins? And like you said, everybody is stepping up. Drew Holiday, Rajon Rondo, they're even playing them on the floor at the same time in a lot of cases. So I don't know. I think Portland is in trouble. I think Portland is in trouble there. So the second thing, Dan. Are we seeing the end of Orlando? And I hate that Orlando's not here to help us with this situation, or at least give his input. But are we seeing the end of his Spurs?
Yeah, especially with this undecided Kawhi Leonard situation. If some reports are true and he doesn't want to be a member of the team anymore, I think that definitely sticks a knife in him, because he's their best player, their youngest player. He's not a member of AARP. So yeah, it's definitely it's not looking good for the Spurs. And this was a rough matchup for him, a terrible first round matchup. I think a week before the regular season ended, they were a 4 or 5 seed. So they really hurt themselves to fall to 7 at the end there. So it was a tough draw, even with no glass ankled Steph Curry.
Well, here's what I fear for the San Antonio Spurs is that I think Pop is not going to stick around too much longer. I just don't know what his incentive, his motivation is. I think he's hanging it up pretty soon. Point 2, I don't think that Kawhi is going to stick around. I think this season has been so weird, and I think there's been I don't know exactly what's going on between management, owner, Kawhi Leonard, whoever, GM, whoever it may be. But this relationship is getting odd, and I think that Kawhi would take a chance to go elsewhere at this point. The third part of that is if you watch their only chance, their best play at their best level right now, as constructed on the floor against Golden State, is LaMarcus Aldridge, and he's doing well, but it just is clearly ain't even close to being enough. I mean, his best is not even close to being enough for the San Antonio Spurs. They're getting waxed by 20 points a game in the series. It's not close. I personally think that this is for sure the closest chance I see as a sweep in the first round to me. I don't see the Spurs competing, not even at home. And I just think we're seeing the end of this. I hate that Orlando's not here to retort. But I don't know, Dan. I just don't see it moving past this. And I think the Kawhi thing is going to get ugly.
I'm with you. I agree. It's tough times ahead for the Spurs fans. And, I'm not really going to feel too much pity because they've had almost 20 years of just constant wins, 50-plus win seasons. So I'm okay with it. They'll have their time. And if R.C. Buford, I think that's their GM, is any good at what he does, then it's his job to build it back up, make another type of Kawhi Leonard type of trade, trading Kawhi Leonard for basically George Hill. So
what about when Pop leaves?
Yeah, you're going to hope he grooms an assistant. I don't see this. Spurs aren't the type to make a flashy head coaching hire, so I would imagine they would promote somebody from within, and you just hope that they've learned enough from Pop to do so. So he's obviously not going to be around forever, and I'm pretty sure he hates America with our person who resides in the Oval Office. So, I mean, I don't know. I think he just wants to go out and chill and just be done with it all. And I don't know. He's always been weird in interviews, but this season has been even weirder if you've listened to some of them.
Yeah, and it's not going anywhere. You hung on as the 7th seed And now you're just going to be bounced hard straight out the ring by Golden State. I don't see it going anywhere fast for San Antonio. I'm sorry, Orlando. I'm sorry. We'll talk about it when you come back. So we do have an NBA mailbag question. Let's talk about that before we move on and get into bring in Thomas' take here. So here we go. I suspect this is a Heat fan, but here's the question. Well, it's not even a question. This ain't even a question, Dan. I don't know.
Liked it. Made me laugh.
So here we go. 76ers can't win dick. This is from Terrell Big Heat Parrish. So something tells me Big Heat is a fan of Miami. But 76ers can't win dick. How about 130 to 103? Where's this question coming from? The 76ers killed the Heat in game 1. Now, Father Time did carry the Heat to a win in game 2, which surprised me. A good win for Miami. I'm going to throw it over to Dan here because he had the courage. He was the only one out of our mock draft, NBA first round predictions to pick the Heat. And I don't know. I don't see that happening, Dan. They got a good win in game 2, but here's also the thing. None of this even counts. Joel Embiid isn't even playing yet. So that 130 to 103 win, that's more along the lines of what's going to happen in this series when Embiid returns, which will be game 4. There's enough of this. He's mad. He's going off on social media rants. There was a question of whether he'd play tonight, game 3. He's not, or tomorrow night, I think. But anyway, game 4 would be like over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, maybe even Monday. I don't know. It's going to be stretched out here, but he's going to play game 4. Then all you Heat fans, Big Heat, Terrell Parrish, then you'll see the real series, and you'll see the 76ers winning a whole lot more than dick.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'll see Embiid on the court when I see Embiid on the court. Doubtful for game 3, could be doubtful for game 4. And this is all I needed Miami to do. I knew they would steal one in Philadelphia because the 76ers, albeit more talented by far, not even coming close to the Heat's talent, but they're just not experienced. They don't know how to win in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win a road game in the playoffs, so they're going to lose both games in Miami. So then it's just flip-flopping from there, and the Heat can win it, and I think they will. They're just more experienced. And it's not like they're lacking talent. They still have the ability, but that comes in big in postseasons. So I think that's ultimately why I'm with Big Heat Parrish here, and they can't win. Instead of dick, let's change that to Miami. So I don't think they're going to win in Miami, and that'll be what costs them the series. Heat in 7 or 6. I don't know.
I like the Heat. I like the Heat too, as far as depth, but they don't have that takeover type player in the playoffs type of player. They are deep. They have a lot of talent throughout that roster, but they don't have that guy. Whiteside isn't that guy. What Dwayne Wade did in game 2 is not going to be your typical game from a Dwayne Wade at this stage. Miami has no chance of beating Philadelphia 2 games in a row, even in this series. It's going to work itself out. Miami may have got their only win in this series so far. Embiid is coming back game 4, game 5 is the latest. I'm telling you, this is close to being cleared. He was following through concussion protocol. They're being extra careful with him. But we've been extra careful with this guy for the last 2 years, Philadelphia. It's time to play him. If now, win. If not now, win. So in Miami, then you'll see the real deal. But no, I don't see this. And Dan was the only person who even had this getting to a game 7, much less Miami winning. So Philadelphia's going to take control. And like I said, Miami has no chance of winning 2 games in a row in this series, Dan. You'll see. Terrell Big Heat Parrish will see.
Maybe not. You know?
It was fun chatting with you guys, though. Appreciate the question. Okay, so what are we going to do next? That's NBA talk. We'll put a bookmark in that. Hey, Dan, Get Ryan Thomas ready. Bring Thomas Take in here.
Yeah, I should have sent the link. I should have actually invited him a half hour ago because of all his technical difficulties.
It was my fault. I didn't even think about it.
He's just busy taking pictures of his cat. Things to do.
Two champs. We're bringing in two champs, a.k.a. Ryan Thomas of a.k.a. Thomas Take on the Thomas Take podcast coming up next. And what we'll talk about is anything he wants to talk about. There's no telling. Probably his cats, but we'll squeeze in some NFL and Buffalo Bills talk too, I'm sure. But that's next. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Brandon Reed, Dan Shalk, and now Ryan Thomas up there in Buffalo. What up, Thomas Take?
I am so excited to join you guys from a laptop. I've joined the 21st century.
Oh, you got a big microphone too there.
Yeah, I'm moving up in the world. This is nice.
And a nice backdrop with the dangling lilies behind you.
Yeah, I got some lilies there.
Whatever that is.
Sleep goes along.
Okay, but how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. This is an awesome day. I've been on a couple shows today, talking draft talk and stuff like that. And this is the best one though by far. I'm most excited to join you guys, and I'm not afraid to say that.
So we're more excited that you're here.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
So a lot to talk about today. We're going to break down some NFL draft, of course. But anything else you want to talk about, man? I'm just going to kind of open the forum to you. You host the Thomas Take podcast. You're always doing something, so your social media followers are always entertained.
Right.
You really do have a lot to talk about there in Buffalo. So there's going to be a lot of Bills talk and what they should do with this draft pick. But anything else you want to talk about? What's going on in UFC or MLB? Yankees are off to a hot start, I heard.
I mean MLB. I mean, what can I say? 14-2. I think that's all that needs to be said. We're talking about my Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, which is why I'm surprised you're not even sporting any Red Sox gear today.
You know what? I have
an opportunity.
I have a hat. This was my opportunity. My hat's sitting over here, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not in a hat mood today. Dan's wearing a hat. I don't want to, cramp his style. I'll just rock the Bills today. We're good.
I think you're feeling Bills GM mode today. So
yeah, I'm feeling
Bills
I'm talking football all day, so it's like, why not? But 14-2. I mean, they rocked Ohtani yesterday. He looked terrible. That was his worst start since he got into the majors, by far. And I mean, I'm feeling new energy at Fenway with Alex Cora and with the reinforcement known as JD Martinez. I'm feeling some happening in Boston.
What's the Yankees record right now? What's the Yankees doing right now?
Nothing. I mean, they fired a manager that led them to the ALCS. Dan knows very well that they were one game away from beating the Astros to go. And that by firing him, my thing is, why did they fire Joe? And I'm happy they fired Joe Girardi, but it was a mistake. And any Yankees fan that says that it wasn't is just a wishful thinker at this point. The team does not look like they did last year. And they added one player that was supposed to make them so much better, and that did not happen so far. So far, it is early, but not looking good for the Yankees. I'm happy to say it.
All right, so what about what's going on in the UFC? I know you got something to talk about there. Go ahead, because we don't really talk about a lot of UFC typically on the podcast. So I want to reach out to the UFC fans of the podcast and let you guide them through what's going on.
So everything that I've heard, Conor McGregor situation, I mean, there's no two ways about it. Whether you're the biggest McGregor fanboy from Ireland or whether you're just a fan of him from Buffalo, he made a massive, massive mistake taking the action that he did prior to UFC 223. If you want to promote a fight, if you want to hype a fight, well, you had a title for 2 years, buddy. You didn't defend it. You weren't willing to defend it. You chose the path of taking the money and running, essentially, just like the song says, by fighting 40-year-old Floyd Mayweather, who I've been a boxing fan and an MMA fan for a long time. That was the worst Floyd Mayweather I've ever seen, and it was still good enough to beat Conor McGregor. So putting that aside, it's time for this guy to get his ducks in a row, get the bad seeds out of his crew. Whatever it is that's going on, he's gotta nip the issue in the butt. Sometimes when you make the money that he knows that he made that much money, you get some leeches on you, and those are the people that he's got to get out, because if he doesn't, he could end up like John Jones, and we all know how that turned out.
Wasn't there also a recent card or an upcoming card that's been like dismantled by I don't know, like either in infractions or injuries and postponements? Did I not see something like that recently?
Right. Well, essentially UFC 223. It was I think it was April 7th, if I'm not mistaken. Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov were supposed to fight each other for the actual lightweight title, not an interim title. Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov were slated to fight this was the fourth time that this fight was scheduled. Ferguson was doing promotion work for the fight. He tripped over a set of wires at a UFC on Fox set, tore his LCL off the bone, which is probably one of the, I would say, a very rare knee injury. It's very hard to do that. Tore it off the bone completely. He couldn't fight. So the UFC says, which they say Max Holloway, who's the featherweight champ, can fight Khabib. They asked Max Holloway to cut over 20 pounds in a span of 6 days. I remember when they announced that, I was excited as a fan because I love Max Holloway. I love Khabib as a fight fan. But to think that was actually doable was a mistake. And that fight didn't happen because Max couldn't cut the weight. They put Eli Quinta in there, who's a 11th ranked fighter, to take the fight. He did pretty well, but considering Khabib won on all three judges' scorecards 50-43, you can take that for a grain of salt. Just a huge mess. Conor McGregor, the bus thing. Ray Borg had to pull out. Michael Chiesa is going to file a lawsuit. Borg is filing a lawsuit. Rose Namajunas, who is the co-main event, she was about to file a lawsuit. She almost missed her fight as well. Some sort of precedent, some sort of action taken, regardless of how big of a draw he is. Time to draw a line in the sand for sure on that guy.
All right, there you go. There's the Thomas Take UFC report. Can you maybe squeeze that in there?
What was that? I didn't hear that part.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking to Dan. I was just trying to get Dan's approval.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was focused on the backdrop of Ryan Thomas.
It is gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Gorgeous backdrop.
Okay, so this is a good time to kind of squeeze in some Bills talk, I guess, since you're here, since you're wearing the hoodie, after all. Right. So what do you think, man? What's your gut feeling here? Me and Dan have got our mock drafts.
I saw that. I actually was just reading that. I think, what it really depends on, do NFL franchises listen to their fans? That's the question, because the Bills fans are pleading for the Bills, not me, but the Bills fans are pleading for the Buffalo Bills to trade up and get Josh Rosen, get Sam Darnold, get a quarterback, Mayfield. There's some of those people out there, as we've talked about before. They're pleading for the Bills to trade up and get a quarterback. Whether the Bills listen or not remains to be seen. But I personally think that if the New York Jets traded 3 second-round draft choices, if I'm not mistaken, and obviously swapped first-round picks with the Colts, just to move up 3 spots in the first round, for a team to move down like the New York Giants, to move down from 2nd to 12, Buffalo's going to have to give up much, much more than that. And I don't know, in this situation with everything going on at One Bills Drive, you got Richie Incognito retired. Eric Wood had a career-ending neck injury. They traded Corey Glenn, who wasn't really a stud, but it left open another somewhat hole on their offensive line. No wide receivers to speak of outside of Benjamin and Zay Jones. Zay Jones had the issues off the field. No linebackers, really. Lorenzo Alexander's a vet. Matt Milano's a second-year pro. There's some holes on this Bills team that trading picks away to get that quote-unquote franchise guy might not set them apart. It might set them back. And we'll see in that regard.
So Dan and I, so you took a look at Dan and I's mocks, right?
I did. Yes, I did. I support your work.
You do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But I mean,
What was that?
do you agree with what I was trying to pull it up? Because I don't know. I mean, I know what I got. Obviously, I forgot what
Yeah,
Dan
pull
had you
it up
marked,
for the viewers, and you tell them who you and Dan got. I don't want to spoil it for you. Being that it was your mock draft and also.
So I'm and we're about to get to a question. I'm going to fit this mailbag question in here real quick.
Sure.
So, let's see. I'm trying to pull it up now. So
You should be more prepared, Brandon.
I'm sorry. I do apologize.
Just going to make a little plug for myself here. These are available on teespring.com.
You have to pay for advertisements on this show, so we'll be
That was so slick. That was so slick. Great way to fill time, Ryan. That was just that was a pro move.
We can't have dead air. We got to fill it with something.
That was a pro move. That was a pro move right there.
If I take a drink of it, people see it that way too. And there's just water in here, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, so I got it, Dan. You're right. I'm sorry. Multiple tabs here, but I didn't even think about it. But anyway, so Dan's got you guys with Marcus Davenport. Defensive.
No.
Yeah.
Read right underneath that.
Oh, a trade with the Giants. Okay, so Dan is saying. So where did you trade?
To number 2, where they selected Josh Rosen.
I forgot. Sorry, Dan's get tricky with it. Okay, we got a question about that too. We got questions that cover both of these situations.
Awesome.
So Dan's got the moving up. This is great. This is great, Dan. I'm glad you picked these questions and then and created your draft around these questions. Your mock. Okay, so Dan's got them moving up. I've got you getting Baker Mayfield. So since Dan threw us a curveball, let me ask Dan real quick. If the Buffalo Bills do keep the number 12 pick, if that's where they're going to pick from, do you think they can get Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson at 12?
Lamar Jackson, yeah, I don't think Mayfield's going to be there, albeit I have a 4th-round grade on Baker Mayfield, so I wouldn't even touch him in the 1st round. But, yeah, I think he's going to go top 10. Teams are going to overdraft quarterbacks in this draft. So, yeah, I think he'll be gone by that pick.
It's a lot of talent out there to draft that many quarterbacks in the top 10 picks. But so I guess you're satisfied with what Dan has. He has you trading up to number 2 to get Josh Rosen. You're getting your guy. I've got you staying pat at number 12 and getting Baker Mayfield out of it. So are you satisfied either way, or you're not really digging what I'm laying down?
Right. Both scenarios, I think, are doable. I think that they could happen. Mainly the one with Dan, I think, has been linked to the Bills a lot. Just in the Twitter sphere and throughout the National Football League of suspicions that the Bills could potentially trade with the Giants due to the fact that the Giants general manager is Dave Gettleman. He obviously worked with Brandon Beane, who's the current Buffalo Bills general manager. But no matter what, if that trade, if Dan's mock is proven to be right, I don't know the amount of picks that Buffalo will be giving up, and that kind of does make me sick to my stomach, the thought of that. I would hope that they could stay at 12 or maybe move up to like 5 and trade less picks to trade up. I'm all about moving up, but not mortgaging, 1st-round picks this year and next year. And the last thing I want to see them do is make like a RG3-esque trade, like Washington did with the Rams. That wouldn't help this current team. Currently, they would be investing in a rookie quarterback that has a lot of pieces that aren't around him yet. So will he be successful out of the gate? Buffalo Bills fans think that we're going to make the playoffs again. That will not happen if they trade up and get a quarterback. It just won't. Too many holes. I hate to say it. I hate to say it, but it just, and if they're thinking of taking a quarterback at all, there's more than just Rosen and Mayfield and Darnold. Mason Rudolph I like Josh Allen, as does Dan. I had a little bit of a back and forth with people on Twitter about Josh Allen, but they have a starter currently that has only played 4 games that I'd like to see what he can do. Meanwhile, that guy learns and sits behind him.
Okay, well, the guy you didn't mention is Lamar Jackson. Let me give you a choice there, because the way I had it laid out is that at number 12, if you stay put at number 12, you could get Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson. Let's just say you could. That's possible. Dan said Baker Mayfield's not going to last that long, and I know he's appealing, which I think some of the appeal for the Buffalo folks. They want that sexy, that sexy guy, that sexy pick, maybe the future savior, like people fell in love with Johnny Manziel.
Right.
So if that's the scenario, if that's the case, you did have your pick between Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson at number 12. Which one you take?
If I got a gun to my head and I got to choose between Mayfield and Jackson, I would honestly take Jackson, given that the Bills have a lot of needs on their offensive line. Jackson could be a guy that can extend plays and use his legs and make things happen. Bills fans that say that he's Tyrod Taylor-esque, there's a huge – give the guy more credit than that. Give Lamar Jackson more credit than that. He can throw much, much better than Tyrod could even dream of being able to throw the football. So I would lean towards Jackson. Mayfield, his size questions is a little bit questionable. I'm a little bit concerned about that, as I am with Jackson in some ways as well. But if I had to choose, I'd choose Jackson.
I thought you might say that. It's been interesting. I think it'd be a hard choice for me too, to definitely say Mayfield over Lamar Jackson. I think people may sleep on Lamar Jackson. We'll see.
One team is going to fall in love with him. That's going to happen.
There's so many quarterbacks, projected prospects in this draft that it's going to be very interesting to see which of the 2, maybe 3, even amount to an NFL starter in the NFL, in the league. And we'll find that out in the next 2 to 3 years, or maybe even sooner than that. So that's going to be very interesting. But we do have mailbag questions coming up. We'll get to those in just a minute. About this situation, we're going to revisit your Buffalo Bills, Ryan, because we have a specific question about A.J. McCarron. And will he have a breakout season? What's his outlook for this coming year? And we're going to talk about that number 2 pick that Dan has you guys moving up into, because we have a question about what Gettleman is going to do with that number 2 pick and all their options and those connections that you guys talked about. So we'll save that for just a minute. But like we talked about earlier on the podcast, now published, Ryan Thomas checked it out. You guys need to check out. It's Dan and I's mock draft, the back end. It's the full thing published on the website. We talked about picks 1 through 10 2 weeks ago on the podcast. Now we're about to give you an unleash and unveil picks 11 through 32, the back 2/3 of the first round of the NFL draft. So I'll start this one out. We're just going to go through this real quickly and name them straight through, and then Dan will give his. It's up, and you can see it again on the website, myfantasysportstalk.com. So check that out. And Ryan, you just sit there and be quiet for a minute, and we'll get to you in a minute. Number 11, I got Miami going with Denzel Ward, quarterback, Ohio State. Buffalo Bills selecting Baker Mayfield. Sorry, everything we just talked about, Ryan. I just went and ruined it all. But I think it'd be hard to turn down Baker Mayfield at number 12, especially when your fans may be clamoring and calling for him. So I got you guys getting him at number 12 and falling out of the top 10. Washington Redskins, Roquan Smith, outside linebacker, Georgia. Green Bay Packers get Calvin Ridley, get that weapon to replace Jordy, wide receiver out of Alabama. Arizona needs a quarterback. They get Lamar Jackson, quarterback from Louisville. Baltimore Ravens get Marcus Davenport, defensive end, Texas San Antonio with the 16th pick. 17, I'm going to go with the Chargers, drafting Derwin James, safety, Florida State. Seattle looking to beef up that defense, trying to reestablish that defense. Seahawks are going to go with Mike Hughes, quarterback, Central Florida. Them Cowboys, Dan, they need a wide receiver. So as a lot of people probably do, and I got a feeling you're not, They're going to go with Cortland Sutton, wide receiver, SMU. Detroit, number 20. Colton Miller, offensive tackle, UCLA. 21, the Cincinnati Bengals. Will Hernandez need to try to protect your quarterback if he's going to be worth a damn. He's guard, Texas El Paso. Buffalo Bills at 22, sliding back in. They're going to get a weapon for their new quarterback, whoever it may be. DJ Moore, wide receiver from Maryland. New England, going to get a running, an outside linebacker. Me and Dan actually agree on this pick, I believe, which is a rarity in this back 2/3 of this draft. Of our mock picks. Rashad Evans, outside linebacker, Alabama. 24, Carolina Panthers. I got them getting Justin Reed. Needs some safety help out of Stanford. And then my Tennessee Titans at pick number 25, Dayron Payne, defensive tackle, Alabama. Just stack that defense at this point. Like what you got going on. think that's a more of a need, or just take best player available. I think that'll probably be Dayron Payne. Atlanta Falcons at 26, Taven Bryan, defensive tackle, Florida. 27, New Orleans Saints, Hayden Hurst, big tight end, another weapon for Breeze in his last couple of years out of South Carolina. Pittsburgh Steelers, Jair Alexander, cornerback, Louisville. 29, Jacksonville Jaguars, get another weapon, lost a couple. Christian Kirk, wide receiver, Texas A&M. Minnesota, going to go with a guard, Isaiah Wynn from Georgia. And New England, again, sliding back in there. They're going to take Sonny Michel at this point. They're going to take Sonny Michel because no one else has. So they're going to take Sonny Michel, running back, Georgia. Philadelphia Eagles rounded out with Darius Geis, another running back out of LSU. So that's a lot of picks right there, guys. You can check it on the website. But that's my mock 11 through 32. All right, Dan, out of all that, now, that back end of it, 11 through 32, we predicted exactly two picks that were the same.
So you were smart twice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, the one we did agree with was the Dolphins pick. Denzel Ward, defensive back, going to the Dolphins. I have actually the Giants in the 12th spot because of the trade with the Bills. So they grabbed Marcus Davenport, an edge rusher who will become a bust in the NFL. I have the Redskins drafting Darius Geis, running back. More bodies at that running back position because they couldn't stay healthy last year. The Packers, I don't have them replacing Jordy. I have them grabbing a defensive back, Isaiah Oliver, huge guy I'm a fan of, Colorado alum. He's in similar mold of Chidobe Awuzie from last year. He's going to be a great player. Might be a little high for him. In the next spot, I actually have a Cardinals trading with Tampa Bay due to an earlier pick. So Tampa Bay actually has this selection, and they take hometown boy Derwin James, safety from Florida State. The Ravens, I have them selecting a wide receiver. They're supposedly in on Dez Bryant. If they don't sign him, watch them draft Calvin Ridley from Alabama. The Chargers, I love your Dayron Payne pick to the Titans, Brandon, but there's no way Payne's going to last that long. He's going to go to the Chargers way before the Titans can even sniff in Dayron. The Seahawks, I have them grabbing edge rusher Harold Landry out of Boston College. My beloved Cowboys at 19. I have them taking Josh Jackson, defensive back at Iowa. This is more of just please do not take a wide receiver Dallas pick. If they do take a receiver, there's only 3 guys I would allow in the first round to be drafted that's a receiver. You had one of them, Brandon, Cortland Sutton. I do like Calvin Ridley. And my boy, your boy, everybody's boy, Anthony Miller. I would love him at 19. He's not going to be a first-round pick, but he's worth it. So I would allow that at that selection. Only wide receivers, nobody else. Defensive backs or defensive tackles, I would love them to take like a Vita Vea, Dayron Payne, but I think they will be gone by the time the Cowboys pick at 19. 20 and 21, I faked out a little bit here. I don't know if you noticed this. You can check it on the website. I have the Bengals trading up from 21 to 20 with the Lions to select Will Hernandez, guard. So actually, that is a correct pick. We actually have Will Hernandez going to the Bengals, but I just have him trading up a spot to grab him. Then the Lions at 21, because they traded down one pick, they're still going to pick up an offensive lineman, Mike McGlinchey, out of Notre Dame. The Bills at 22, I actually have them helping out that offensive line depth, and that's James Daniels, center from Iowa. Patriots, we both had Rashaan Evans, linebacker from Alabama. Panthers, Greg Olsen is getting old. Time to replace him. Dallas Goedert, my number 1 tight end from South Dakota State. He's going to go there. Taven Bryan is actually the guy that the Titans end up with. So we do agree that they'll go defensive tackle, but they're going to get the one who's very raw and will still need some time to develop. I like Bryan's burst. It's probably the most elite burst I have seen out of a defensive tackle in the draft in the last 5 years. Just doesn't do anything outside of that very well. So he's going to need some coaching. Maybe a bonehead ex-linebacker could help him with that. The Atlanta Falcons will select Maurice Hurst, defensive tackle of Michigan. I wouldn't touch him in the first round, but somebody might. I have Mike Gesicki, tight end, going to the Saints. You also had a tight end, Brandon, Hayden Hurst. He's a 26-year-old bust, so don't take him. I don't know why. People are high on him. He's terrible. Garbage. So Mike Gesicki is actually a good receiver. He'll do well with the Saints. Can't block worth a lick, though. I'm skipping one. Justin Reed, you had him as a first-round pick to the Panthers. I have him as a first-round pick to the Steelers. Solid safety out of Stanford. You may know his brother, Eric. He cannot always stand on 2 feet. The Jaguars, that's a kneeling reference, if you didn't get it.
I got the joke. I got it.
The Jaguars, they do get a playmaker, DJ Moore from Maryland. Vikings getting some offensive line help. Orlando Brown, big Orlando Brown. His dad lost an eye because of a flag thrown by a referee, if you didn't know that. Leighton Vander Esch is going to the Patriots at 31 overall. Solid linebacker. He just screams New England Patriot to me, so I like him going there. And I have a trade up to the 32 pick to grab Lamar Jackson to end the first round. I just haven't decided what team will do so yet. So via trade with some NFL team is on the website. But he will be the 32nd pick.
Talk about my fantasy podcast and my fantasy scenarios there. You got an unknown team. You don't even know who the 32 pick is going to. Yeah, that's out there, Dan. That is out there. I appreciate it. You don't think Lamar Jackson's going to go? So you're saying Lamar Jackson's probably has a good chance of even lasting till round 2?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's just I don't even agree with my own mock draft. I would never have 3 quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, but for some reason I mocked that to happen. But I think it would be ridiculously stupid if these quarterbacks all went that early. But it's the NFL. Teams are so desperate for a franchise guy, and the slight glimpse of one will make NFL general managers do crazy things. So I think you can see a lot of quarterbacks go. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a Mason Rudolph or a Lamar Jackson slide to round 3 or 4. It's that crazy sometimes too. They could go even earlier. I don't think Mason Rudolph's a first-round pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets drafted in the first round, say at 31 to New England.
All right, so Ryan, what do you think, man? I'm giving you a quarterback in Baker Mayfield, and I'm also giving you a wide receiver in DJ Moore out of Maryland in the first round. You like it?
I like DJ Moore. I feel like Dan actually, I think he tagged me in an article about DJ Moore, and I thought it was good. Basically, DJ Moore is a guy that I think might need that little push to be better than what he is. I think there's more there than what we have seen so far. I don't think he's a bust or anything like that. I just don't think he's reached his full potential. So if the Bills use one of their first, round picks on him, I would hope that would, motivate him to be better than what he has played. Not saying he's played poorly, but I just think that there's more there. Baker Mayfield, I think the fans, how he would react, how he would work with the fans and the franchise and all that stuff, I think he'd be marketable and good in that aspect, but I worry about the current Buffalo Bills offensive line mixed in with him. I think the Bills got to deviate from the past, having a quarterback that's 6 foot tall I know of all people, me to mock someone's height is a little unfair, being that on a good day I'm 5'7".
Yeah,
But
there's something about that because you can only get away with that in a rare occasion, like say Drew Brees. It's
Right,
not gonna
right.
typically work out.
And Drew Brees kind of watched Drew Brees, and he'd be the first to admit it. I was actually watching him on Dan Patrick's show. He said that he changed his drop back to help him see, to help him, create angles and create openings. That's something that I don't know if Baker Mayfield has a hitch in his game. Can he get past it? That I'm a little bit concerned about due to the fact he played on a very limited offense. Dan has talked about that pretty well in well detail, and that is a little bit concerning to me.
So let me ask you, let's put a bow on this NFL draft and all the prep ahead of next week's live draft show. Is what do you think is going to happen? What would you like to happen with your Buffalo Bills? Are you convinced that they are going to move up to number 2 or a move up period? And then what position would they move up to, and who are they going to get?
Right. I think in a best case scenario, a best case moving up scenario would be like if for some reason if Josh Rosen falls and they can get him by moving up maybe to 5, if Rosen fell to 5 or if Darnold fell to 5. Those are the 2 guys that I would trade up to get. I'd be more willing to do it for those 2 guys than for a Mayfield or for an Allen. But
so if not, you stay pat?
If not, I stay pat. Yep. If not, I know that I got a lot of needs. I got 2 first-round picks, 2 first-round picks in the top 22. I got 2 second-round picks. I got the first overall pick in the 3rd round that I got from Cleveland. I don't need to be one of those teams that mortgages my future. And I think Brandon Beane and me are on the same page. Everything I've watched from Brandon Beane, there's been nothing that said we're definitely going to trade up. It's been we're going to look at it, but we're not going to pigeonhole ourselves and put us in a situation where I'm drafting.
It's
So
answers.
Not trading up.
It's answers to the question you can't give yet because you don't know the full question yet. So, but what's your gut? You think they will, or they're going to stay at 12?
I think that they're going to try, depending on who gets picked. It really depends on Cleveland sets the tone for the draft at first overall. If Cleveland takes Darnold, then there might be some movement. But my gut honestly tells me that they're going to, if they were to trade up, they'll trade up from 12 to 6 or 12 to 5 or not trade up at all and work with what they got and build their team and make their team better rather than just making one position better. Granted, it's the most important position in the game. We all know that, but they got to make their team better, not just one position.
Okay, so Dan and I gave our mocks. I'm going to ask you to give your mock just on Buffalo's. You're staying pat. You're picking at 12 and you're picking at 22. So
Right.
Picks 12 and 22. Who do you have them drafting?
Picks 12 and 22, I have them taking Josh Allen, 12th overall, and 22nd overall, I had them taking Rashaan Evans out of Bama.
Yeah,
So-
that was good. So you think Josh Allen is falling that far?
I do, just due to the fact that I think some teams might try to trade up for other quarterbacks. I think Darnold's going to go to Cleveland. I would say Rosen is going to go to the Jets. I could say the real wild card is Denver, to be quite honest, because John Elway's never satisfied with the quarterback position. And they got Case Keenum. He's coming off the best year of his career, but it was only a 2-year deal. Maybe they draft a Mayfield. Maybe they go after a Mayfield and go from there. One team that's also a wild card for Buffalo that could definitely allow them to trade up to get Josh Allen at like a 9 or 10th overall is Miami. How set is Miami with Ryan Tannehill with the knee injury that he had? Would they dip their toes in the quarterback waters? That's something that I think could cause Buffalo to trade up minimally, but I got Miami taking Vita Vea, and then Buffalo taking Josh Allen in my mock draft.
All right, there it is. That's Ryan Thomas Take Podcast. He's not going anywhere. He's going to stick around for the back end of this and help us answer these mailbag questions, which we're going to do next. This is My Fantasy Podcast, myfantasysportstalk.com. Brandon Reed, Dan Chalk, and Ryan Thomas of Thomas Take. So, a lot to get into. Wrap up really this NFL. There was a lot of draft questions, which is great. We're going to continue the draft prep, I guess, for next week's live draft show. So, let's kick it off with a question from Matthew Allen. Dan's probably the best one to ask on this because he's got all the trades, he's got all the fantasy scenarios. His world is a little bit different than ours. So, there's no telling what Dan will say. But here's the question: do you think any blockbuster trades will go down on draft day? The only thing I think New York is trying to back off of trading Odell Beckham Jr. That could have been a blockbuster trade if they decided to pull the trigger and something happens. Maybe it still could, but I don't know. That's out there. Earl Thomas, which I see a lot linked to your Cowboys, Dan. See if he may move.
Pass.
And I'd say we're talking about all these scenarios and all these quarterbacks in the first round in positions. I would say do not be entirely surprised if the New England Patriots jump in the sweepstakes as well and may try to move up and grab themselves a quarterback. I don't know. That would be a shock, but they got something they got to start thinking about. So other than that, I don't know, Dan, what do you think? Any blockbusters as far as names or someone that could be moved as far as blockbuster impact and not just trading draft picks and swapping positions?
No, I mean, I don't think you're really going to see any players get traded on the draft night, the first round. Maybe later in the draft, you might see some for conditional picks or mid-round picks. I'm with you. I think the Patriots are going to be they're a little sneaky play in this draft. I've read a report today that they think Josh Rosen is going to slip outside the top 10 and that they're going to make a trade up very early for him. Whether that's to happen, is one thing, but whether it's moving up into the top 10 or even just the top 15. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on with the Patriots. But yeah, I think we're definitely going to see some deals being swung. You might not consider it a blockbuster, but look at the Bears last year, how many picks they gave away to move up one spot to a player that wasn't going to even be taken there. I would call that a blockbuster deal, albeit stupid. It was just a blockbuster deal. So yeah, I definitely think you're going to see that happen. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Shock factor. That one had it.
Yep. I'll never forget that. During the last year with the live show, I remember I hopped on right after that happened, and I just thought, why? It's still there's for the life of me, I'll just never understand it. But continue.
I mean, we still don't even know if they got value out of their pick. It's hard to tell exactly right now, but I mean, Trubisky is supposed to be their guy. I mean, leading into the future, I would assume. So we'll see if the progression continues. But anyway, yeah, I guess that's considered blockbuster. I don't know, but what do you think, Ryan? Do you see anything big going down? Like was mentioned, Odell Beckham Jr., Earl Thomas is looking to move him out of Seattle. Patriots, do they make a splash and try to get a quarterback? Anything you see that possibly could happen as far as blockbuster?
I think in terms of New England, I wouldn't be shocked if they moved up a little bit, but if they moved up strategically to where they wouldn't have to give up a whole lot. Maybe the quarterback market is just depleted and we see more quarterbacks go in the first round than what we had originally thought. And New England, maybe moves up a little bit so they can get Mason Rudolph or somebody like that. I think they're pretty aware. New England is aware of the fact that their defense definitely has some holes in it, to say the least. As the playoffs went on, especially in the Super Bowl, Nick Foles didn't throw many incompletions in that game. You can, compare it to whatever you want with Malcolm Butler and all that stuff, but their whole defense was waning as the season wore on. So I'm thinking they look to make some stuff happen on that side. I do think that, the Bills are likely to trade up given the right circumstances as I talked about in the last segment. Maybe you have a team like Washington move up for a Calvin Ridley or something like that. I wouldn't be shocked to see some teams that might not have weapons for new pieces move up, whether it be Washington or, maybe a team sees Saquon Barkley fall to the third pick and the Jets say, we'll trade the pick down if we can get our quarterback still. And there could be it's so hard for me to wrap my mind around the amount of times teams can trade. And it's going to be a wild first round. That much I do know.
And it may be because of the amount of quarterbacks that are in this projected first round, or,
Right.
projected top scouts. I mean, we're talking about 7, 8, to 10 possible quarterbacks here that you don't know about. And people tend to make moves and go after quarterbacks more. So and unloading this many, really solid prospects in the first round could be dangerous and tempting. And that's when you may see some trades go down. But appreciate the question, Matthew Allen. Let's move on. This is kind of a long one here, but we've been touching on it all night. This is from Dennis Ray. With Gettleman holding the number 2 pick and his history of not trading his top picks, do you think he holds true to his philosophy with being in Buffalo and then having a history of them being buddies and a good bit of picks to trade up to move? Do you see Buffalo Giants trade happening, or Giants staying at number 2 and getting their guy? I heard a few podcasts bring this up, but I really like different people's perspectives on this, so appreciate the question. Oh, and you mentioned the connection with Bean, Ryan. So,
Right.
Start us out on this one, man. It affects you. So, what do you think about this Gettleman holding on to the pick and the relationship there?
Typically, I mean, there's definitely a real relationship there. They worked together for a number of years in Carolina, so this isn't a rumor that it's actual realistic, a real relationship between the two. They have a real chemistry. They've worked together for almost a decade in Carolina. So if there is any team that might trade with the Bills, that's an obvious one. But the thing is, when one team makes a trade with another team in the first round and it involves, top 6 picks, swapping, the New York Jets made the trade with the Colts. And I said it earlier, but in terms of what the Bills would have to give up to move up, the Jets gave up 3 second-round picks to move up 3 spots. I'm pretty sure Dave Gettleman knows that Buffalo is desperate for a quarterback. This isn't a business of doing favors. If Buffalo calls and says, hey, New York, is this the Giants' office? Yes, it is. We want to trade with you to get the second overall pick. Dave Gettleman's going to say, I'm naming the price. You're not. You're trading us both firsts, both seconds, and a first next year. That's a lot. I actually think that exact haul, it might even be a little bit more than that. I actually think that is what a fellow team like the Giants could somewhat milk from Brandon Beane and the Bills if they're desperate enough to move up for their quarterback.
Yeah, and we're kind of hitting on the same sentiment, because that's what I was going to say. That's my first opening response to this when reading this question, is that Buffalo would have to ante up. There's no real incentive for the Giants to move off of this pick, because they could keep the pick. And I don't think they're a team that's really in complete rebuilding mode. I think they were just a piece or two away and a bad coach away from being right back in the playoffs this year. Right. You can't tell me that team just fell apart like that. Eli's good. ODB ran into some issues, but the team just needs to be healthy. That's for sure. You got to start there. But as far as the pieces go, I'm not so sure they're not more than just one piece or so away from being right back in the playoff hunt. So they hold all the cards here. The Giants hold all the cards. And if I'm kind of standing pat here, keeping my number 2 pick and bucking Cleveland's plan. And I'm taking Saquon Barkley at number 2 to add me some talent to that offense, right, and some help. I mean, that's what I see them doing, and the Giants have gone a long way. You may think about, well, they need to protect Eli and maybe a lineman. Well, they've kind of gone a long way over this offseason to improving that. They've signed, 2 offensive linemen, one being Nate Solder from New England. So they're doing a good job in the offseason of kind of shoring that aspect of it up. And if they add a key piece like Saquon Barkley, a supreme talent to their offense, boom, let's just fire this machine back up, and you got a new coach now. Hopefully things will go smoother on the offensive end like 3 years ago before McAdoo took over. And that's the way I'd roll. I don't think there's any real big incentive there for the Giants at this point. Dan, what do you think? I know you totally disagreed on your mock drafts, but Giants hold all the cards here.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question, I definitely think it helps when in negotiations to have, comfort level with who you're dealing with. So you're more likely to talk openly, I think, and a deal can develop off of that. I don't think either side would be looking to screw the other one over in any way. But let me say this about my mock draft. I mocked that due to the sheer hope that I hope the Bills do move up. It's kind of an inner feeling that I have. I think I'm still not sold, despite it being a completely new front office. The Bills do stupid things, and I expect that to happen. So it's just kind of an expectation. And what I had thought of the trade, of what they would give up, because in my mock draft I still have them with the 22nd pick. So they don't give up both first rounders in the deal. They actually give up the 12th pick in this year's draft, the first round pick in 2020, first round pick in 2021, and 2019. So you're giving up four first round draft picks to move up.
Oh God, awful.
And that would be crushing to the franchise. So that's what I'm hoping for. We'll see if it happens. But that's a way to also appease the fan base. Hey, look, we got the number 2 pick, and we still have another first round pick this year. So they could still address some of those needs. They still have their second and third round picks to deal with this year to help shore up that roster. So I think that's a realistic trade possibility if you're trying to improve now, get your guy, and tell the fan base, yeah, look at what we did, and then deal with those not having those first round picks later.
So, David, what do you think? I'm sorry, go ahead. What'd you say?
I said the Thomas Tig would not approve of that.
I would hope not. I would hope most Bills fans wouldn't, but I think they might actually be okay with it.
Well, let me ask you this, though, Dan. What is in the best interest of the Giants, though? What should the Giants do?
Giants should stay at 2, take Saquon Barkley, and win the East next year, just the way the Cowboys did when they drafted Zeke.
Yeah.
And I don't even think Barkley's going to be the best back in this class. I really don't. I have him ranked number 1 just based on, you look at him. But I think, a guy like a Darius Geis could be a better pro. So, here's the thing. The Giants haven't had a running back since Tiki Barber. You can mention Brandon Jacobs, Ahmad Bradshaw. They were good, but
flash and pan.
Yeah, they're not. You get your workhorse right away, and that's ultimately what the Giants have needed the last 5 years is a running back. If they could actually run the football,
and they are addressing that offensive line in the offseason.
Yeah, so I think that's very possible. And the guy who asked the question even mentioned how David Gettleman doesn't trade his first round picks. He keeps pat, stands pat, and drafts best available player. So if you're going with what he said, that's Barkley at 2, I would think.
Well, and it kind of goes back to the point I made is I don't see this as a second worst team in the NFL. I think they got a gift last year by having such a bad season and getting a number 2 overall pick, because I think they have a playoff caliber roster. It just has to finally get tuned and tick again. But the pieces are completely there. And they're making the free agent moves, like I said, to kind of shore up that offensive line, protect your quarterback, which I think still has 2-3 years, get you a really good running back, whoever it may be. So I think this is an odd situation, and I think you better watch out. I think they could win the NFC East possibly. Philadelphia's going to be strong, but I think the Giants are going to be battling. I think they're going to be ahead of your Cowboys, Dan, and I definitely think they're going to be ahead of Redskins. Be right back in it if the coaching move works out. But that guy who asked the question, Dan, that was Dennis Ray. So
Dennis Ray.
Let's move on. We're going to get back into Ryan on this one. So here's the thing. This was from Riley Rare. Any chance AJ McCarron has a breakout season this year? Why don't they just let him try? Just try, Ryan.
There's a chance he would if these. I hate to say it, and I'm insulting my viewer base, but Dan touched on it. There's some dumb Bills fans out there, and I have said this openly, so it's nothing that nobody's heard before. These fans are so desperate for what they think. They're desperate for the Bills to buy into an idea. Whoever it was that coined the term franchise quarterback ruined the NFL, really, because there is so few guys that get drafted by a team and play on that team for 20 years over the whole span of the NFL. It doesn't happen. It does, especially in today's NFL where there's so much awareness with concussions and things like that. We're talking about Josh Rosen. That's a dude that might not even be playing that long due to the awareness that he has on the issues and the injuries that he's had and his dad's occupation. So to answer the question, I think that McCarron, if given the opportunity, he's dying for the opportunity. He's only started 4 career games. Cincinnati didn't give him the job over Dalton, which some Cincinnati fans out there said that was a mistake, that they didn't give him that chance. I think that it's possible. I think it is possible that he could have a breakout year if Buffalo gives him the opportunity to.
All right, so Dan, what do you think on the subject? Let's just say A.J. McCarron plays a full, healthy 16-game schedule for the Buffalo Bills next year as the starter. Does he have a chance at a breakout year? And to me, that means, let's just say he finishes in the top half of the league, top 15, top 16. Is there a chance of that at all? Is A.J. McCarron that guy?
Yeah, I mean, I like A.J. McCarron. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire, but he can definitely be solid. I actually comp him similar to the guy he was under in Cincinnati, and that's Andy Dalton. He's an Andy Dalton type of quarterback at his highest level. The question I think that Buffalo is going to have to answer is they need to actually put some weapons around him. If LaShawn McCoy went down at any point, the Bills might have the worst offense in football. I mean, you have Zay Jones, who I don't know what the heck he had some mental or drug influenced state where he ran into a window. You have Kelvin Benjamin, who I heard is very happy Sonic and Chick-fil-A are here in Buffalo, or coming to Buffalo. So you're relying on that. Those aren't weapons for a quarterback to have a breakout year. So I think it is possible. I don't think it's likely. But let's take a look at Andy Dalton's stats, his rookie year. Let's kind of look at his numbers. He threw for 3,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. I would see a similar season by McCarron in Buffalo as a success if that were the case, if those were his numbers.
Great point, Dan. Ties it all back together that it may not necessarily be just A.J. McCarron, but the weapons around him. You got to have the talent.
And if they're going with A.J., just as a PS, if they're going with A.J. as their starter, they would have to change their whole draft plan, which that's what I would want them to do. I want them to build around what they have. I want them to fill the needs that they have currently, which there are plenty of. So, yep.
So trade up and get Barkley.
I mean, I'd be more for that than them getting a quarterback, to be honest. I really would.
I got you. And Dan said LaShawn McCoy's not getting any younger, but appreciate the question, Riley Rare. All right, the last one, this is for Dan. We talked a lot about Dez Bryant earlier and being released, but we didn't talk about next stops for Dez Bryant. And that's what Kerry Fringle wants to know. Where does Dez go, bro?
This is tough. I don't even want to talk about it, but I will. I mentioned during talking about the mock draft, I think Baltimore is a logical destination for him, although I wouldn't want to see him go there because Joe Flacco is worse than the 7-year-old next door neighbor that keeps hitting my mailbox with his football. So I want to see him flourish in his next opportunity. He really wants to stay in the NFC East. I thought Washington would be a great opportunity for him. Supposedly they're not interested. He wants to go to the Giants. I mean, if he's on the Giants, that's I think he would do very well there. I mean, you can't really double cover him and Odell Beckham, so something would have to give. Houston, I think Houston is likely. I think that's the favorite in my mind right now, is him staying in Texas with the Texans opposite DeAndre Hopkins, with Deshaun Watson coming back healthy. I think that would be dangerous, and instantly they would become the favorites in that AFC South, where they almost finished dead last year right behind the Colts. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I heard the linkage to Baltimore. They've expressed interest. I've seen that Dez is interested in playing with Odell Beckham in New York. But I think you may be missing two of the obvious ones. He's going to New England or Green Bay. He's going to play with an elite quarterback and resurrect his career. That's what New England does. They resurrect old wide receivers' careers. And, of course, Green Bay still looking for a replacement for Jordy. Be a good compliment to an Aaron Rodgers. I just think he wants to go, or should want to go to someplace with an elite quarterback. One of those two teams. I'd see that happen. Completely see that happening. Ryan, you got any opinion on the topic, or what would you like to see? Don't say
honestly
Buffalo. Don't say Buffalo.
No. I'm not saying, but I actually don't want that to happen, to be honest, because it doesn't make sense for them where they're going as a franchise. Yeah, I don't want that. What I think could happen, the first team that I thought of when he was released was Houston, with Deshaun Watson, with DeAndre Hopkins. I think that would just be entertaining as a football fan to watch that, because the sky's the limit for Deshaun Watson. Him staying in Texas, I think, is a cool story. Him invading the AFC is a cool story. But I am frankly, I am shocked that the New England Patriots, I haven't heard anything about them reaching out to him or anything like that, at least. I thought that would make a lot of sense, because if there's anyone that could kind of tone down Des Bryant's personality, it would be Tom Brady.
He might just get a ring messing around with Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's similar to what Tom Brady did for Randy Moss. Like, Randy Moss was coming off the stop with Oakland, and he needed to kind of be, sit down and shut up type thing with that relationship. And I'm not saying Des is at that point, but it would just be a new page for Des Bryant, a new lease on life, I think, if you were to go to a team like in New England, like New Orleans, like Houston. New Orleans, I think, is a team that's interesting as well. Him playing with Drew Brees would be fun to watch.
There you go. We'll find out, Kerry Fringle. Appreciate the question. All right, so one more, Dan. One more, and we kind of teased it. A big addition to the My Fantasy Podcast family. Sincerely. So we got one less mailbag question here. It's a long one, Dan. Usually are, but a lot of stuff to talk about here. So this one comes from our good friends Nick and Judy Pertins. Dan.
They're always asking questions.
Man, you should see the question here.
Every week.
I had to put a new ink cartridge in my printer. Brandon, and the one who would rather act than be on MFP. Got to give it to Orlando, though, beating me last week, despite me forgetting to do my lineup 2 days. Enjoy the regular season win. Be happy. A week 2 fantasy baseball win is like winning a week 5 of fantasy football after starting 4-0. This is going to be a long season. It's going to be a long one today, fellas. I'm sorry. The guy who can't make the playoffs, and my hometown boy, Brandon, wants short and sweet. But if you make the playoffs or get over 500 in the fantasy league, it ain't happening, brother. He kind of lost me there. I feel like this was a shot at me, but he kind of lost me there.
It was a shot at you.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way. I don't know, stinging here. But to the question, I don't really have one this week, but I felt the need to bring you in on some Pertins family news. The future fantasy baseball champs, Nick and Judy show, will be adding a third member to the family due November 2018. We are blessed and happy and wanted you to share with the MFP fam. So I guess here's the real question, Dan. First of all, congrats to the Pertins family. First addition to the couple, Nick and Judy show, and we're going to have the Nick and Judy and probably someone else show next year. I'm going to have the kids doing fantasy sports real early, I'm sure. But here's the thing. Congrats, Pertins fam, for sure. Nick and Judy expanding the family due November 18th. So here's the question. For real, though, there's a real serious question here, though, Dan. Baby names. Go.
7.
Yeah, I mean, they look like nice people. I'm going to help them out.
Yeah, I'll help him. Well, that was my next one. Was Soda. SODA.
I hope the Pertins get it. We're adding the Seinfeld reference tag to the show. Ryan, you should know. We can do this every single show. There's Seinfeld references in every single My Fantasy podcast. There just is. Okay, but I knew you were going to go there, Dan. 7. Okay, here you go. You look like nice people. Let me help you out. But I actually gave this a little bit more thought, Pertins. Here's what sounds hip and sexy to me. Okay, for a boy, let's start out with a boy, Parker. Parker Pertins or Pete.
That's actually a good name.
Perkins.
I like that.
That was a good one.
Petey Pertins. Now you tell me Parker Pertins or Petey Pertins is not an athlete stepping up to bat. Petey Pertins. That just sounds like a baller. That just sounds like a baller. So I like that. I like that. So we got a theme here going, and I got one. I got a couple for you too, Judy. If we have a girl, gonna name her Presley or Preston. Presley Pertins. Preston Pertins. It's just hot. I just like that. So I'm glad I could help you out. Don't listen. They're not going with Soda or 7, Dan. They're not.
Well, then a real one, I will take Dan. You can Daniel is the full name. IEL. So yeah, you could do that too.
So there you go. I'm glad I could help you folks out on the podcast. Life-changing, My Fantasy Podcast, family-changing. That's what we do here on the My Fantasy Podcast, Ryan.
Yes, we do.
It's special stuff. It's big. It's big every single week. You never know what's going to announce. 2 weeks ago, we announced 2 new champions. This week, we're announcing a new future champion, possibly of our fantasy league, in addition to the Pertins family. So great show today, guys. We appreciate it. Appreciate all the love, and appreciate you for joining us. Ryan, you got a Snapchat for the Thomas Take takeover?
Well, yeah, actually, my Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel, I've been putting a lot of stuff on there. So, yeah.
I said Snapchat,
but
Ryan.
yeah, you ain't Snapchat.
Snapchat. Snapchat. The stuff that the kids use, right? Snapchat. All right, so Snapchat, Rye-T, and both of my football numbers, my illustrious football career, 3145.
00.
He actually has Snapchat, Dan. We're gonna have to get on that Snapchat. We're gonna have to get on that thing.
I got my Bitmoji on there too. You can snap code.
That's Ryan Thomas and the Thomas Take Podcast. We're gonna end it right there. We're gonna end it right
champs. Ryan, just before we go, we talked about your cats earlier, so you'll have to listen to the earlier episode.
Earlier you talked about my cat?
Yeah, your cats.
Yeah,
both.
you're not going to talk about it.
2 champs. You never bring them up. We wanted to know why. 2 champs.
2 champs. Me and George every day. Living the dream.
All right, that's enough.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough. Check him out on Snapchat. That's Ryan Thomas Take Podcast. The 2 champs of My Fantasy Podcast. Dan Shaw, Brandon Reed. Until next week. Later, podcast peeps. Peace.